going back to the very beginning is trading. Whether it's Egypt and Queen Hatshepsut trading with the Sudan, or it's the different Mesopotamian river valley tribes, trading is going to be important. Not only are we trading materials, but we have that fancy word of cultural diffusion. Trading is not only going to move goods and services, but ideas, religions, thoughts, philosophy, education. So trade is an enormous part of human and world history. Coupled with that are going to be technological advances. And throughout history, humans are going to want to find a way to trade more items faster and more cheaply than any other way. So we have going over land. We have doing it on horseback or camel. Then on a ship that you need to row or sail, or eventually steam power, the steam engine railroads. Trading is going to be all important. It will connect entire civilizations. So we're going to start way back in the ancient world. And remember, 3 continents that are always going to be linked. All right, the Fertile Crescent, the crossroads of the world, are Africa, Europe, and Asia. It will take time to link in the Americas, because when the Bering Strait melts, there is absolutely nobody there. So to quickly start out, we're going to show a map here. And the big system that we're going to talk about is the Silk Road, which will run from Korea. The Silk Road is kind of a horrible name, because it wasn't one single road. It was different paths, hundreds of miles wide, that linked pretty much everywhere. So it'll start in Korea, it'll go across China, it'll go down into India, down into the Middle East and Africa, up into Europe. The Silk Road is going to be the biggie, but it's going to be like I-40, but with a bunch of tributaries linked to it. And so it's really going to get its heyday, its start, in the later Han Dynasty. So eventually the Silk Road is going to move from Asia all the way over to Europe. And along the way, everybody is going to contribute something. We're going to go more detailed here in 1 second. All right. So the Silk Road trade will extend from China all the way over to Rome in the 1st and 2nd century AD. Remember, with your synthesis, what is a good empire to counterweight Rome with? The Han Dynasty, all right? And the Han is going to drive away those Mongols. They're going to bring peace. And what we are is going to have nomads, herders, all right? Trade routes, people on horseback, and horses are the prime mover here, that are going to move in caravans. Now, what is a caravan?
A large group of merchants.
Large group of merchants staying together for safety, traveling down or across Asia together. Are most guys going to go the entire length of Asia?
Yeah.
No, they are not. There will be relay stations, like little farmers markets along the way. The new fancy word in AP World is caravanese or caravanazis. It's a fancy word for saying a group of caravans. And early on, all trade is going to have to take part over land. You're going to have to walk these 7,000 miles from China all the way to the Middle East, to the Mediterranean Sea. So we are going to be linked.
How long would that take?
What's that?
How long does that take?
If you did that all encompassing, it would probably take you up to 2 years.
Okay.
All right, and that is why nobody went the full distance. They went, 6-8 months deep into it and back. And along the way, they're sharing language, they're sharing religion, and they are sharing technology. From China will come ideas and things such as silk. Out of India is going to come spices. From the Mediterranean is going to come things like olive oil and wine. And from Rome is going to come iron. So everybody is adding and contributing a little bit to the trade route. Trade routes are always facilitated two different ways. Why would I travel all the way over to Mia and Alexander and give them something of mine if I got nothing in return? Like, that would not make any sense whatsoever. So we're going to go back to 200 BC. All right, we're going to start way back there and work our way to the end of the Roman Empire. The Chinese will turn their silk over to the Indians for spices, for nice pretty jewelry like jade and silver. The Indians would take the silk and they would move it to the Middle East and to Rome for ironworks or for wine and olive oil. Again, this is all being done over land. At this time, the 200 BC to 500, the 700-year period, Buddhism will move from India and it will go over into China. So we think that Buddhist is more of a Chinese religion, but it started and it originated in India. And so not only are we moving, spices and gold and silk and iron, but also ideas. And the Silk Road is going to be powerful. But eventually it is also going to have some negatives to it. You guys ready? All right. Now, eventually, when we get to the end of that period, when we get to the fall of Rome, we're going to be in the Middle East. And people got tired of traveling over land. In order to get from Africa to the Middle East, across the Red Sea, what did you have to have? A boat. And so technological advances at this time are going to make ship traveling much easier. The Chinese are going to invent the concept of the compass. They are also going to have the stern post rudder, the rudder on the back of a ship that allows you to navigate much more easily. And so the Silk Road is no longer just over land, but now we are saving time, especially from India or the Middle East or over to Africa, by traveling on the water. So this is the time where Europe devolves into the Middle Ages. Rome has fallen, we've got, chaos and nonsense. But if you remember back into the ancient days, going back to the phone home Phoenicians, the ancient Greeks, Carthaginians, Romans, during this 500 BC to 500 CE period, all right, shipbuilding was out there. So now we're going to move more quickly in the Indian Ocean by adapting sailing technology. And this will extend the trade route all the way into what is today Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, and all the way into the Indian Pacific Ocean islands of Malaysia. So in the entirety of the Pacific to the Atlantic is now integrated. Chinese are still trading silk. We're going to add in pottery. And from India is spices. From Africa, it's ivory. And we're also going to begin to start taking people. Gold, salt, people. You know when you guys are good here. You guys ready? I'm waiting for me. I'm watching your fingers. Everybody ready? All right. Now, what's going to enable Indian Ocean trade? No longer are we going to dig in and row. You go up seeing the old Charlton Heston movie, Ben-Hur. We're not just going to row and row and row. You guys are probably clear now, huh?
Yeah, I was going to wait for a minute.
No. It's the monsoon winds. Remember, especially in India, the winds blow off of Africa around this time of year in the spring, taking the winds off the African coast to India. Then in October, they reverse. So you're no longer using muscle power. We have the technology that enables us not to get lost on the open sea. And we can also build a larger, more stable ship so we can transport more cargo. So the Silk Road will connect Asia all the way over to Europe. The Indian Ocean trade for a long time is Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. Europe is kind of left out in the cold because it's in the middle of the Dark Ages. Right? Nobody really cares what's going on. This is the time where we found like stuff from the Great Zimbabwe in Africa and China, and Chinese porcelain in the Great in Zimbabwe. A big crop that is going to spread out of Asia and will grow very well in Africa and later in the Caribbean are bananas, rich in protein and potassium. And when the banana crop, a foodstuff, before we couldn't send perishable food, why? It was spoiled. Now we can do it quicker, we can do it faster over the ocean, we can now spread it, and now that's going to cause a massive population boom. Think of between Greece and the Middle Ages. Everybody ready? All right. So the Indian Ocean trade, the Silk Road, is going to start China or Korea. One going down here into East India, another route going down into West India, coming back up, following the main route, because the reason why it goes up here is this is where all the large cities are. It was a road kind of linked, laid down by Alexander the Great, and it's much easier to travel the same distance, East Africa, the Middle East, and India, by water. So you have two different parts of trading going on, the Silk Road on land and the Indian Ocean trade on water. Until Rome falls, there was some trading up in Rome, but mostly it will end in Constantinople, which is closer to the three continents, and it is much, much, much safer. What's going to destroy trade up in here for Rome for many hundred years?
Mongols.
The Mongols, all right. When the barbarians come in, everything is just shut down. So all the rich people leave Rome and they go over to Constantinople because they can still trade. Yes, sir.
So that's kind of far from Rome. Why didn't they settle anywhere close?
Well, because between Rome, there was Athens, but Constantinople was land connected, and it was the growing urban population. It's where all the good stuff was.
Okay.
All right. So, same time, it's kind of hard to think of a puzzle. Silk Road starts it, the Indian Ocean continues it, and we're still in East Africa. Now we're going to add in that missing piece of the puzzle, the Trans-Saharan trade route. The western edge is Axum. The far western edge is going to be Ghana, Mali, and Songhai, right? Okay. Here is where we're going to add in a new mode of transportation. We've done walking. We were Marco Polo. Right? We've gotten on horses coming out of China. We added the stern post rudder, and we've added a compass to the ships. And now we're going to get what's called the ship of the desert, camels. Camels have the ability to regurgitate and digest their food many times. They can carry heavy loads, and they can handle the heat of the desert. So while the Silk Road is growing across India and Asia, connecting Eastern and Western Africa is the camel. All right, we all kind of make fun of the camel. And the early Trans-Saharan trade route is going to exchange a couple things. Gold is always going to be big. Next to gold is salt. And then palm oil. It's kind of like the Greek and Italy's version of olive oil, EVOO. You can cook with it, and you can use it as fuel for your torches, like your tiki torches that you use to keep mosquitoes away. During the days of the Roman Empire, in North Africa, the Romans who migrated from Italy to have land down in North Africa, whether they were soldiers or people kicked off their lands by the latifundists, they find that olives grow down there too, and along the Mediterranean, wheat grows very well. And to add to drama in the theater of the gladiatorial combats, let's always go get some lions, some tigers, water buffalo, big scary creatures that you can use to fight with. Cameron, you doing all right? You look like you're intense. You all right?
Just focus
He's
on
really
reading.
chlorinated.
No, you guys are guys. Okay. All right. So now we're going to make a big jump. This is when the whole world starts to come together. It's 600. We're going to grow the West African empires here. We're going to connect it over to the Silk Road. We're going to connect it to the Indian Ocean trade. But what happens in the late 1450s? James, who's your favorite soccer player?
Ronaldo.
Where is Ronaldo from?
Portugal.
Portugal. What are the Portuguese going to do? Well, how are they going to invade? How are they going to get from Portugal down to here?
Better with sound technology.
From Henry the Navigator. Alexander, you read any of those Richard Sharp books yet?
Not yet. I'm too
So-
busy watching season 2 of the Luther show.
I got it. All right. By the time we are done from 600 to 1450, remember how the Silk Road early on only went this way?
Yes.
Now look at the different branches we're adding to it. All right. As we go throughout time and there are more people and more goods are being traded, whether it's Alexander the Great's empire, the Gupta dynasty in India, the birth and the spread of Islam, there are more trade routes. Glass, metalwork, Persian rugs, crystal, exotic spices, ironwood. There's always these spices coming out of India in silk and textiles from China. We're adding more and more and more goods. It's like a Walmart going back and forth. The reason why the Silk Road expanded during a big part of period 2 here is the Tang and Song dynasties were extremely powerful Chinese dynasties. And at the end, when Genghis Khan and the Mongols come around in the 1200s, that place was locked down. What's the old saying? I think Cameron mentioned it in class today, that a fair maiden, Hannah, could put a pot of gold on her head in Vienna, Austria, and she could wander all the way to Nanking across Eurasia, and would any harm come to Hannah? No, they would not. It was extremely safe. Large empires sometimes thrive on trading, on money. You want as many things going back and forth as you can. You also gain access to ideas and technology. So a lot of people traveled. Even the mythological Marco Polo's journey to China and the Islamic traveler Ibn Battuta wandered around at this time because it was safe. Unfortunately, along with good stuff, ideas, religion, and technology, by the mid-1300s, the Mongols, carving out their empire, also brought the black or bubonic plague from Asia into Europe along the Silk Road. So not only will we lose 33% of the people in Europe, but it also spreads like a wedding cake laterally across Asia as well. People did not have resistance to these diseases, so there is a negative impact on the Silk Road. More people, more goods, more interaction brings disease. Think of it as when the conquistadors showed up to the Aztecs or the English settlers got into North America, a little sneeze and a cough, and an entire civilization is wiped out. So, okay. Indian Ocean trade during this time. East Africa, all right? Who's setting up trading empires over here in East Africa? What group of people are going to set up big trading outposts?
Axum.
All right, Axum is up here. And then who else are big traders at this time? Been traders forever.
Indians, the Bedouins.
And Bedouins become Muslims. So we have the Muslim kingdoms over here on East Africa. Then, oh no, we get Ronaldo. And Ronaldo and the Portuguese swoop around and they see all this trading from India to Southeast Asia to Malaysia and the Middle East. And who says, well, if we can't have it, we're going to destroy it. And that are the Portuguese. The Portuguese are gaining in strength because of not only the Renaissance technology, but as Cameron said earlier, Prince Henry's sailing technology, the astrolabe, the sextant, the Mercator projection. We can now travel long distances by, what's that? The astrolabe is the early version of the sextant. You measure where the sun is at a fixed point and its degree to the horizon, and by measuring the degrees you can roughly tell how far you've traveled in one day. It's kind of accurate, but not really. So we invent the sextant, which makes it even better. So you measure the sun or the stars at night, and you see how many degrees they move from the next night. Gives you a rough idea of your distance. All right. When the Mongol Empire begins to fade, Indian Ocean trade picks up. And that is because the Europeans, especially the Portuguese and the Dutch, are getting involved. Vasco da Gama makes it around the Horn of Africa. He gets to India, and he buys a whole bunch of stuff. And too bad Tom's not here, because when you go back to England with like salt and pepper and curry and paprika, and you put it on English food, all of a sudden it has flavor. Oh, bangers and mash. This, what the fish and chips? This tastes really good. Holy cow, it has flavor. All right, awesome. That is on the western edge. Coming over, all right, we're going to start getting into the age of absolutism. And exactly the same way colonizing the Americas will fuel European absolutism, same thing's going to happen in China. This is where you get the famous Ming Dynasty voyages of Zhang He or Chang Ho, where he takes his massive fleet of 68 warships around, showing the power and wealth of China. From China to East Africa, you had to give him a sign of tribute to... Yes, so if it's good enough, we will assimilate you and you can be part of our peaceful trading empire. If not, we'll just conquer you. Give me a moldy banana and you're like totally wrecked. Yes. All right. This isn't really that important, but anyway, the people in southern Africa and over in East Africa are going to have their languages merge with Islam, and this is going to form the modern Swahili dialect. If you go to East Africa, it's what you would speak, but if they ask that question on the AP exam, then we're in. Yeah, well, anyway. All right. Trans-Saharan trade route. What is important all the time?
Trade.
Yes, trade. But what kind of goods?
Gold.
Gold and salt. What else are we going to add at this time?
People.
Slaves. All right. Slaves are going to go over into Asia, but many are going to begin to start going to the Americas. Everybody good to go?
I don't like slavery.
Nobody really likes slavery. I think we're all clear on that. That is bad. All right. Ghana, Songhai, and Mali, the three great West African empires, are going to connect Middle Eastern and Indian Ocean trade with Europe. That gold and salt coming back and forth is going to be important. Gold brings the Europeans to Africa. Slaves keep them coming back for centuries. As the Europeans will work with these guys to take slaves to their New World empires. The Native American population in the Americas are going to die, so we're going to have to replace it with African slaves. So talking about me.
Those are my fingers.
I know. We're almost done. After we got the Columbian Exchange, and then you guys ready?
Party?
What's that?
We have a party afterwards.
We can.
You can get us all a bunch of Coke. And we can.
Coca-Cola?
Yeah.
West Africa, well, I'm on YouTube and out in Goodbye, I'm like, yeah, I can just see some freak there.
Oh my God!
All right. So, out of West Africa, it's gold and salt. Gold and salt, gold and salt, gold and salt. Get that through your heads. Gold and salt. When in
Gold
doubt,
and salt.
West Africa is gold and salt. The only other thing there's going to be is slaves. And that is going to allow these three West African empires to become wealthy and flourish for...
Was ivory born in Eastern Africa?
Yeah. Decorations, sword hilts, medicines, things of that nature. You guys got this?
Yep.
All right. As a result of the Trans-Saharan trade route, same as Buddhism moving to China on the Silk Road, Islam extends across Africa over to West Africa for the simple fact that Islam was spreading during this time. That is the big cultural shift. As Islam spreads across the world, they bring their religion with it. The West African empires were traders, just like the Muslims, so it makes sense that they integrate themselves together. Sharing their religion allows business opportunities to grow. So, many of the people of West Africa learned to not only speak, but also to write Arabic. They did it simply for business transactions. It's all about the money, money, money. ready? You guys
Thanks.
holding in there? All right. Very few of the West African empires will hold on to their old polytheistic beliefs, and that's one of the byproducts of cultural exchange, is sometimes your old indigenous practices are going to be
Wiped out.
wiped out. All right, last one here, period 3's 1450 to 1750. This is when everything comes together. We've had the Silk Road, we've had the Indian Ocean trade, we're swooping around doing this, we've got the Trans-Sahara trade route. Now, Columbus is going to get himself lost over here in the West Indies, and he's going to find things like the banana and sugarcane and tobacco is going to go really well. We're going to find a bunch of gold here, we'll find a bunch of silver over here, and up here we got a lot of lumber and trees and animal pelts and weird stuff that I'll go fix right now. So, the Columbian Exchange. You may hear the Columbian Exchange, you may hear mercantilism, you may see triangle trade, transatlantic trade. Believe it or not, it's
All the same thing.
all the same thing. Now we are going to know mostly that the Europeans come for gold and silver, but don't forget cash crops, tobacco, cotton, indigo. All that stuff is going to be cash crops, and it grows extremely well in the Western Hemisphere. In exchange, the Americas are going to send back to Africa and Europe Native American crops like corn. Corn was so well revered in ancient cultures that it was worshipped as a god. Sweet potatoes. What's that?
Where do we get maize? What? I've just never seen it.
Maize. So corn in Spanish is maíz, so it's not
It's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
It's, yeah, I think it's spelled the exact same.
I'm just writing down corn.
Right there was cultural diffusion and exchange. Thank you, Cameron. That was a bit of trading and diffusion right there.
Yeah,
Thank
high
you.
five all the way from
That's
across
a pretty
the
good
flag.
explanation. I think Alexander wants to high five you.
Oh, intercept.
I feel like potatoes would feel much better if it didn't have an E at the end. Like, I feel like potatoes, like, I just think.
Because you think
B.
they're eating toes?
Yeah.
In a pot.
Potato.
Potatoes.
Potatoes. Especially good are sweet potatoes because while they're orange, they taste really, really good and they add a lot of flavor. And then you julienne some sweet potatoes and fry them up with corn or maize, and all of a sudden it tastes really good. Throw some spices from India on there, and now we've got
A meal.
a meal. So those crops are big boosters to populations in Africa and Asia. Yes,
Did
sir.
you say they planted cash crops there, or they extracted?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Yeah, they'll take some from Africa and India and plant them there. Anyway. Also growing great in the equatorial climates of the Caribbean islands and places such as Brazil. Coffee, right? Sugar cane, right? Why drink tea without sugar? It's muddy water. Wheat, rice, bananas, all those grow almost year-round in the equatorial climate. They make their way over to Africa, to Europe, and Asia, and these are big, big money makers. The Americas were virtually untapped agricultural areas. Since the Bering Strait melted, no one bothered with the people of Mesoamerica. Now that the Spanish and and the French and the British are there, they're seeing this lush, rich soil that grows a lot of stuff, and we can take it and we can run. All right, we can sell it. So, Europe also introduces livestock. Remember, Mesoamerica, all work had to be done by human labor because they didn't have large beasts of burden. So the Europeans are going to bring over cows, horses, sheep, and pigs to the Americas. So cash crops and food go one way, and technology and livestock comes the opposite direction. Ready? All right. So there it is. All right. Squash, potato. All right. Peanuts, potatoes, tomatoes, corn. A lot of agricultural products go over to Europe. Coming over is wheat, rice, barley, oats, cows, sheep, pigs, horses, but also bad stuff like the flu, measles, mumps, smallpox. That's going to wipe out entire civilizations. But big crops native to the Americas: squash, pumpkins, tobacco, peppers, and above all, corn. Maíz is how it's pronounced in Spanish, and it's spelled almost the same way. Clearly, I don't know why people didn't know that.
Maize and corn are not spelled the same way.
Maíz is, and maize.
I know.
Get your head in the game, bro.
Alright, taking it, Google Translate with this one.
The negative part of all of this, all right, is the slave trade. Someone has to, extract the sugar and the cotton and the tobacco. So Europeans will take from the Americas the raw materials. Down to Africa, they will trade tobacco and alcohol to purchase slaves. And the slaves will be taken to the Americas to do all the heavy labor. That is because all of the Native Americans have been killed off by labor exploitation, poisoning, so on and so forth. So we've got the Silk Road trade, the Indian Ocean trade, the two oldest. We add in the Trans-Sahara trade route. And now we've got the Columbian Exchange. The only one older would be trade around the Mediterranean from like Phoenicia and Greece and Egypt going back and forth. About a quarter of the slaves taken from Africa are going to die on the journey over. From illnesses, some from suicide. And if there was a bad storm and the ship got lost, the first thing to go were the slaves. But slave was big business. If you invested in a slave ship and made one successful run, you were rich beyond your wildest dreams. So money overcame ethics and morals. Will, what don't we like?
Anything.
Slavery.
We hate slavery.
We hate slavery. But it was about making some money. All right. All right. This era, not too much. All right. This is the part of the time where imperialism, where Africa, Latin America, and Asia are going to be forced to react to the industrialized West. And the industrialized materials world keep up the triangle trade, getting raw materials from these native areas. Believe it or not, we're almost done. Let me know when you guys are ready. Yes, no, maybe? It's also the time in Latin America where the United States begins to exert influence over the Latin American countries. Thank you, Bethany, for leaving me some Coke.
Coca-Cola.
Coca-Cola. YouTube lands. All right. Big business throughout this time is sugar. Sugar can be used to flavor food, it can be turned into rum, and it can be turned into molasses. This is your Jack Sparrow, your pirate age. You guys holding in there? Should I go faster or slower?
This is a good piece.
All right, we're going to be done by 5, trust me. Hollywood. All right. All right. Other things Latin America is going to provide. Cuba, tobacco. This is before we knew it caused cancer. Argentina is going to grow a lot of beef. And Mexico will have precious metals like copper and silver. Copper and silver are industrial materials where everything else is an agricultural cash crop. I think even McDonald's for a long time, not before 1914 because it didn't exist, bought a lot of Argentinian beef. And here is an industrial product used in gears, in seals, in industrial machinery, holding in oil and other liquids, rubber. And so rubber is a very important material that was grown in Latin America. With the Islamic world, they begin to fall behind simply because the West was industrialized. The biggest thing to put down the Islamic world trade during this time will be the creation of the Suez Canal. This now negates the need to sail around Africa, and it's a shorter route from Europe to India and Asia.
That's one in like Egypt, right?
Yep. So the Silk Road at this point really
Wasn't doing much.
no longer matters. China is big. China, all right, had always been able to hold itself to have a balance in trading and trade materials. The Ming were a dominant empire. And the Chinese were not only rich in silk and tea, but porcelain. And a lot of silver comes over out from the Potosi silver mines in Peru, and we get a new dynasty, the Qing dynasty, the last one. Well, this is the time when the British had the empire in which the sun never set. So they would take opium poppies from their colony of India, go over to China and sell opium to China for silver. The British were making 100% profit. They took other things and sold it to the Chinese. The Chinese got addicted. When the Chinese started running out of silver, the British said, well, give us your tea, and then the British would go and sell that. The chump was China, who was getting pillaged. But this is imperialism. Ready? All right. The British victory in the Opium War cracked open China. China had always made sure it exported more than it imported. Now they are at the mercy of Western imperialized countries and Japan. Ready? Modern day trading, it's almost difficult to define because of the internet and the global economy. Everything is done at the push of a button. Money, gold, silver, stocks, bonds, hamburgers, hot dogs, tennis shoes, Everything can be shipped and sold at the click of a button. Two of the biggest trade treaties to know about would be the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, mainly Middle Eastern countries and Venezuela. And what they do is decide on how many barrels of oil are going to be produced. The more barrels of oil that are being produced, the cheaper the price. But it's a very touchy, delicate thing with the industrialization of India and China and the world growing population. Oil is beginning to, be that fuel that there's a lot of it left, but what else is there? So the price is really, really, really high. 1976, it causes a big problem when OPEC quit the sale of oil to the West over problems with America backing Israel, and then the world economy ground to a halt, and they're like, oh man, that's a real bad idea. The other one that gained attention recently is the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. What it did was it opened up the Americas, Canada, the United States, and Mexico, and there were no tariffs. For America to export things to India or Mexico, we did not have to pay them any import-export taxes. The same with them. You guys bailing?
Yes, sir.
Thought we were working on your essay.
I know. Smart ride.
All right, we're done in like 10 minutes. You guys have a great weekend.
Can I email you?
Yeah.
Okay.
The problem is that Mexico did not have the industrial capacity of the United States and Canada, so they're on the losing end, and they want to renegotiate. The biggest one is the European Union did the same thing for Western Europe that NAFTA did for the Americas. Rather than having Italian lira and German marks and French francs, they went to a common currency, the euro. There was open borders between member countries, Germany, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, you name it.
See you on Monday.
You got it, guys. Have a good
See you
weekend.
on Tuesday.
It has gained a lot of attention recently due to the idea of Brexit, when England withdrew themselves from the European Union. And that, guys, is literally it. Important trading empires of the world. Do you guys have any questions? Told you I'd get you out of here.
I have questions about other stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you oh my god, now everybody's staring at me, sorry.
Nobody look at me yet. I'll shut off the camera.
Can you,
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Hit that like button. Make sure to comment below.
Go ahead, Mia.
can you tell me what periods are
Team Melega.
in world history?
Yes.
Young Melega.
All right.